Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I have a real treat for you today. There's a new series coming out, a murder mystery series from Dark Horse Comics and Matt Kindt's Flux House imprint. I have both Matt and his mother joining me today. They're the writers of the series. Matt also handles the art duties, and they're going to tell us all about it. So welcome to the show. Thanks, you two.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Matt coming back, and obviously his mother for the first time. So before we start talking about the series, in detail, although no spoilers, of course, because we want people to check it out for themselves. Why don't you give us the elevator pitch, Matt? What's the series about in your mind?
Elevator pitch is this kid and his aunt go on a vacation to Paris and then stumble into sort of a locked room murder mystery, and then end up kind of maybe solving it, maybe not. I don't want to spoil that part of it. But then through the course of the series, you kind of find out, they've solved other mysteries. So this isn't the first one they stumbled onto. And then I don't know, am I missing something?
Well, I would say one character thinks he's on vacation, but the other one doesn't think it's a vacation.
Yeah. And so there's sort of an odd couple, and it's sort of funny, but a little bit dark. And then the actual murder, it's locked. What did I say? It's locked. It's a locked room. It's an unlocked murder mystery, unlocked room murder mystery, something like that.
Yeah, unhinged, I think was what the press release said. So let me ask you, Margie, there was another thing in the press release here that talked about Matt as a young boy and how you would present puzzles and mysteries to him, what have you. So give us a little background. Is this literally decades in the making?
I would say yes. The short answer is yes. I think that Matt and I are really kindred spirits, and he was such a pleasure to raise. And growing up, I thought that along with the work, we had to have a lot of fun. And so we would get in the car to drive to school. We would try to make an adventure some way, look for clues, like maybe on the way to the car, like why is there snow on this side of the building and not the other? What made the tracks in the snow? What happened here? And then we, I guess, grew into actually setting up murder scenes at home in the family room. And then sometimes there were actually real mysteries because Matt would do something and I would think, how did gravel get on the windowsill of his little bathroom? And so I would just say that a long time in the making, in that we've always been trying to puzzle things out together.
The whole story of the gravel on the windowsill was not me. It was my brother sneaking out onto the roof of the house, and I was the lookout.
You were the lookout.
But so I was the weak link. They turned the screws on me, and then I gave my brother up. That's really what the story is.
So interesting, so amazing, and I suppose, Margie, in a way, not surprising that Matt became a storyteller, because whether it's a mystery or something else, really we're storytelling and building story even back then, right?
Absolutely, yes. I think you could include bedtime stories.
Oh, we would go on family vacations, but we would drive everywhere, and then you would always read a book. You would just read aloud a book. This is before audiobooks, we're in cars or whatever on tape, and you would just read the whole books on vacation. And I remember hating it at the time. But I was like, I just kind of want to, I don't want to, but then you get hooked into the book, and then all of a sudden we're there, and then we read so many books that way. Mm-hmm. And then, that's what family vacations really is like one of the secret origins, is because if you weren't reading, then we were in the backseat reading comic books, Tintin and that. So I think a lot of times I wanted you to stop reading so I could get back to Tintin.
You should have said something.
We were spoiled. I will say, in hindsight, we were spoiled.
But we started writing stories too, making up stories, and I think we would do things like maybe one of us would start a story and the other one would take it on from there, and then after a few minutes another one in the family would take it on from there. So and I think that we just love storytelling in any form.
So building this story must have felt a little bit like a flashback, Matt. I saw also in the press release it mentioned you and Margie sitting down at a table, kind of playing out the characters. You mentioned the young kid. Obviously, that's probably your role, and then Margie, you're taking on the role of this of his aunt, the one that's really into solving. So batting those ideas back and forth, did it just feel natural?
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
It did feel natural. We were in the kitchen at the kitchen table, but we set it up like a partner table. He on one side, I on the other, and we just slipped into the characters and started role playing. And we would forget sometimes to write down the lines that we liked, and I had a lot of laughs. And I would say the story pretty well moved, I would say, from beginning to end, pretty much with that technique.
Yeah, no, I think, and we started out, we had a twist. You would come up with a twist for the mystery twist or whatever. And I think that's where it all started. I was like, oh, that's such a good twist for a story idea. I was like, let's do a book together, and so having that already in our pocket, then the rest of it was just fun and sort of filling in the blanks of, well, how do we get there and what do we do and who are these characters? And then I think there's the characters are kind of us, but also not. Like that's they are and they aren't, so I think that's part of the fun. I think the interactions are very real. I think there's a lot of very real stuff in it, which is entertaining.
So, bringing your mom in on this project, Matt. So two questions about that. First, what an incredible resource. It sounds like she's a natural at this storytelling thing. And the second thing, what took you so long, man?
Oh, I know. It's funny. It's just like any idea until it occurs to you. It's very simple once you have it, but until it occurs to you, you don't know why. And I think I was like, oh, hey, this, and I think it just had to be the right thing, like the right little story prompt. I was like, well, this isn't one I can do on my own. This is one that benefits from having us do it together. And then, because usually working alone is in some ways easier and it's faster and you just, whatever, you get in your own head. And so it's just a different process. Also, I think I'm older too. So I think, I'm more willing to collaborate now than I was like 20 years ago.
Right.
I don't have anything to prove anymore. I just want to have fun. And so this is kind of something to have fun with.
Well, but everything came together in an unusual and surprising way. I think our love of mysteries and solving crime has followed us all through our lives together. And so naturally, we were watching some of the same mysteries on television. And over our weekly Wednesday night dinner, the first thing we do is try to see who has the best solution or who solved it first. And I really think that's how it started. Was you like one of my solutions to the crime?
Yeah, we were watching Only Murders in the Building, and I was like, you have to watch this show because it takes place in the building much like my parents live in.
We live in a cooperative that's just a little bit smaller than.
It's just the same kind of building with
personalities,
with the same kind of weird characters. No offense, I mean that in a fun way.
Yeah.
but I was like, you need to watch this show for that reason. And then we were watching. You were at the end of season 1. You're like, oh, I've solved it. I know what the twist is. And then she had a twist that I thought was so smart and so genius. I was like, well, if this is the twist for this story, that this show is the best TV show I've ever watched, But if it isn't that, then let's do a story that has a twist like that. And of course, the show didn't do that. We still like it. It's still a good show, but it's not what your idea was, which is I think so much better. Anyway,
well, and then he said we ought to write a story together, and I said, well, I have 3 mysteries on a shelf. I had them on a shelf for 20 years because. Excuse me, even though I love to write, I usually write nonfiction. And so I'd forgotten about the mysteries. They were written just for fun. So I pulled them down to see if there was anything there. And that really, I think, was the seed then. I thought, well, we could take this story and add the twist that we liked that they didn't do.
Yeah, it was neat. See, well, you're like an expert on the 1904 World's Fair, St. Louis World's Fair. And when that happened, there was like a real crime, a true crime that happened with with whatever we want. I don't want to spoil all of that either, because we used a lot of the real thing that happened back then as part of the story. But there's some true crime element in the book as well. It's based on history, which I thought was great. I didn't have to do any research. You had already done it all.
I just had to make sure that you stuck with the facts.
Yeah, I had to draw.
We needed to.
I did have to redraw. I got some notes on my drawings. The characters weren't in the correct. Didn't have the
clothes of the era.
Yeah, and because she had a mask on and whatever. I was drawing like a comic book version. I got in trouble for it.
Well, you didn't get in trouble. You didn't get in trouble, but I had to show him some pictures of in 1904. It was very particular how women could dress, especially during the daytime,
and then I got in trouble.
You didn't get in trouble. There was never any trouble. There was never any trouble. But I remember saying, "Well, you can do it that way, but it'll be wrong." I approved.
As only a mother scolded as only a mother.
Yeah. No, it's great. Probably the smartest editorial note I've ever gotten to make me do the note.
Well, let me ask you this, Margie: was there anything in the process of building out, in the process of creating this comic? Obviously, Matt's been doing it for a long, long time, so you might have already been familiar. But was there anything that was particularly challenging for you coming into this project, or something that surprised you about the way everything was crafted?
Nothing was challenging. It was just all. I think we both write and tell stories. So I think that wasn't challenging at all. But you mentioned the word surprising. The thing that was surprising was this: my generation did not grow up with graphic novels, and even though I've kept up with Matt's graphic novels, until we worked on this project and until I started to help out with the watercoloring, I had never really looked at the art the way I should have to appreciate it. And what surprised me is the detail. And I know it's shrunk down. I know we were painting and what we saw will be shrunk. And so detail I noticed will probably maybe even disappear or go unnoticed by the average reader. But I looked at it and had a new appreciation. I think of someone like Rembrandt. Now, I'll compare my son to Rembrandt if I may. But or any graphic artist, I would compare them to Rembrandt. Rembrandt would take a model and he would draw that person, and then he was done. But a graphic novelist draws the person's face or visage, and then puts different expressions on it, and you can read the emotions in the different expressions, and then they take the person, change the whole stance of the person in the gestures, and you can see how revealing the gestures and the expressions are to developing the character and the story. And I had never examined his art in such a way before, and now I'll never look at it the same way again. And I would just encourage any reader, especially of my generation, who might be picking up a graphic novel for the first time, to read the story and then go back and then just look at the art, just look at the pictures, or vice versa, and appreciate how much is revealed about the story and character through the art.
Yeah, you know what you're saying. I know why that happened. This is one thing with here's a little trivia for the book, is that my mom painted a lot of I had her go in and paint like all the skin color, because there's one color, and while she's doing that, then I can be painting something else,
Well, it's easy, and I'm an amateur.
And it's, but during that process, like if you've every colorist knows this, and I've painted other people's art, and when you're painting someone else's art, something you didn't draw, you see it in a way that you never see it. Like if you're just reading it, you don't look at it the same way. But if you're actually putting something in between the lines of every panel and every page, you look at you see the art in a way that no one else does. Mm-hmm. And I think that part of that revelation is when you were doing that. I think you're like, I was like, yeah, I forget because I've been doing it so long. Mm-hmm. But I will have that feeling when I paint. Like my studio mate Brian Hurt he'll do drawings and I'll paint them sometimes, and then I have that feeling. I was like, oh wow, your drawings are really good. And you don't realize it till you're working on it,
Yeah, it's that visual aspect of the storytelling, kind of to your point, Margie, where you take the words out and the pictures still tell a story. And that's the magic of comics. That's the magic of this sequential medium. It's why I love comics. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, no, that is the beauty of it. It's different than prose, and it's different than, I don't think people can compare it to movies, and I know they do and everything because it's a visual thing, but there's the thing you can do with words and pictures working against or with each other is something you can only do kind of in comics.
Yeah, and it leans into the pacing of the story as well, right? Like that's something that new comic creators that don't have a lot of experience with published work, one of the things I see them struggle with the most. You have that limited amount of real estate. Was that something that came up at all, Margie, as you're trying to translate the story that you two had in your head, where you're like, well, we got 3 issues, it's only so many pages, so many panels. Was that challenging at all?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up because it was so long ago it slipped my mind. Yes, because I do write. I was just shocked at how few words can be in a graphic novel, and I'm very good at tightening up a manuscript. I'm very good at slashing. But yet this was really, really down to the bone. And there were times where I thought, there just aren't enough words here. And the story's not going to hold together. And it didn't feel good because I like a little bit of description. I like to play with language and have fun with it. And so that didn't really feel good. But then as the project progressed, I could see that what I had given up in words, he was picking up with the art. And so I may have cut out a phrase or a sentence or two, but the meaning of that was captured in the art. And so the story was still fully there. But that was a challenge because I do like playing with words and making nice turns of phrases, things like that. So I did give that up, but I feel it was a fair trade-off.
Yeah,
sure.
and I tried to preserve some of it. There were some scenes where I was like, well, we need to preserve all of this because it's such a good.
He did.
So there's some dialogue heavy sections, but they're for character driven reasons, and I think and it wouldn't have been how I would have written it, but I think that's why it was so important to keep that in there because I was like, this is definitely your voice and your style in the thing, and that's what made it so good, or that's the reason we collaborated so we could have. Because I wouldn't have done it that way, but I could see how it was working and it was good. I was like,
we'll see if your fans agree.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right about pacing and everything too. But even when I'm reading a comic, like I don't want to, if I hit a big block of text or if there's like a page of just like prose or something, I don't ever want to read it because I like reading books, but I like reading comics. But there's a balance there you have to have the right amount where people aren't feeling like it's work, or you're dragging the story down.
Yeah, I think for myself, having been reading comics for almost 5 decades now, it's like I get the same initial feeling, but if that block of prose advances a story or it's written really well, before I know it, I'm sucked into it, and then I don't mind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's just that initial like, oh, I gotta. It's a little bit of a.
Yeah, you got to flip your brain a little bit. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
This is.
I remember.
This is different.
I probably read Watchmen. Like 3 times before I actually read the text pieces in between because I didn't.
The pirate story, I was the same. I read the superhero part of it, and probably 2 or 3 times before I went, well, I really should stop skipping this pirate part.
I know, right? And it's really good, but yeah,
100%. Well, you mentioned this earlier, Matt, how the characters are sort of you two. You gave more of the voice to Sam, and Margie gave more of the voice to Aunt Mary. So they're you and they're not you. So let me ask you. We'll start with Margie. In what ways is Aunt Mary you, Margie, and in what ways is she not?
I would say she's like me in that she is going to lead a life that will never be boring. She's going to make something happen, hopefully good, no matter where she is. And if she's at home, she's making something happen. Maybe she's at home, but she's bidding online for a pair of gilt chairs at an auction. And then the chairs come in, and she always wants to know the history of an antique she buys. And even if it takes her to Paris, or especially if it takes her to Paris to find out what she needs to know, she's going to go. So she's always looking for something unordinary to happen during a day. And she has great love for her nephew. She never had children of her own and wanted children. And then here comes her nephew, the perfect child for her. So she's like me in that way, is that she intends to go through life never feeling bored.
And how is she not like you? What are the big differences?
Oh, how is she not like me?
Spoiler.
Yeah. How is she not like me? I'm not sure about that. I may have written too close to the phone.
No, I'd say it's like 95% true.
But the one difference I could think of was that during the COVID lockdown, I started putting on a little bit of weight. So I'm probably a little bit heavier than Aunt Mary.
I started drawing you at the beginning.
Don't draw me. Draw me the way that I will be.
No, we haven't solved like we haven't solved 3 murders.
Oh, well, that's,
so
I don't know about that.
Have you solved?
We need to catch up sometime. I know there have been 1 or 2 where I wouldn't say that I could go to the police with the evidence or not, but in my mind I know what happened. So you're right though. She is much more aggressive in putting forward her solutions to crimes.
I think both characters are 90% us and 10%. There's they kind of have a darker backstory that you get to towards the end, whatever, and you kind of see what motivates them. And I think that's the part that is fictional, just because I don't know. I feel like we're generally happy, but I don't know if the characters are fully happy in the book.
Well, Matt, is this version of Sam, is it you a little younger, or is he?
It's definitely, it's me in like maybe 20, I guess, and that was fun to sort of go back. I felt like I had to go back and write this character how I was then, which is a little embarrassing, but also not that different, which is also embarrassing.
Well, except your parents did not abandon you.
That's the backstory is.
They may have had a little bit of 60s hippish edge to them, but they didn't abandon you.
Well, I had to get rid of my parents in the story because you guys are still here. So I had to come up with sort of these hippie parents join a cult and then they disappear, So there's that. That's not real. But I couldn't have parents in this one, so.
So you mentioned running off to Paris or hopefully having an adventure pull her to Paris researching antique or what have you. Is that one of your favorite places, Margie? Do you like Paris?
I do. I've only been there once, but I would say I just love travel, and I would say that I have gone to not enough places, but wherever I've gone, I've tried not to go as a tourist. I've tried to set advance that was that other people couldn't do, like going to Niagara Falls is pretty, I would say, a cliche, but we have family there, so we ended up going to Western New York quite frequently. So I set up a time where I could go and not just go to Niagara Falls, but I could be in the control room and change the lights on the falls at night.
Wow.
And so I would just say, if you're going to travel and have an adventure, try to think, what do most people not get to do that you would love to do? But yes, Paris is one of my favorite cities. I've only been there once, but I read a lot of books. I read a lot of nonfiction also, and detective stories like Georges Simenon. And they're set in France or Paris. And so I have a great love for the city, even though I've only been there once and intend to go back.
Yeah, sometimes that's all it takes. You go to a place one time, you just fall in love. It just speaks to you in some way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
I love France because when I go over there, they treat comic book creators like rock stars, and I don't understand it, Yeah. And then, but I like it. I was like, is this why I like it so much when I go over there? Anyway, so next time you go over, it's going to be a little different. You're going to get treated differently.
I'm going to be work pretty hard, I understand. But that is one reason why do love the country and the city because of their high regard for the arts. And I have heard Matt through the years say how well he was treated. And in fact, when you were first starting out, that was one of the first memories I have, is what high regard they held you, and that made me fall in love with anybody who was good to you.
What's great about it was my first trip over, and it was to support my second book, Two Sisters. I was going in there to do a book tour and signing, and it's my second book, so hardly anybody knew who I was or what I did. But when I got there, and then the driver picked us up, and then my editor was in the car, and the radio was on. They're like, "Oh, listen, they're talking about you right now on the radio." I was like, "They're talking about," it wasn't like, "Oh, they're talking about me." I was like, "They're talking about comic books on the radio." Like, it's such a different culture of comic books over there, and like the respect for the medium that I just, having dedicated my life to it, it's kind of nice to see the whole nation that also appreciates it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, hopefully you'll get to experience some of that, Margie. Maybe you guys go over there and do a con or something of that sort, and mix some business with pleasure. That sounds like it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Certainly something that most tourists don't get to do.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you two so much for your time. Good luck on the book. It's 3 issues, everybody. If you're going to be at San Diego Comic-Con, Dark Horse is going to be selling an advanced copy of issue 1, so be sure to pick that up. Otherwise, look for issue 1 coming in August. But as we're winding down here, let me ask you this, and again, no spoilers, and I'm sure you won't, but is there a particular part of the story, maybe it's a twist, maybe it's something else, maybe there are multiple moments, but is there a particular part of the story that you can't wait to get fan reaction and get reader reaction? Does something come to mind when I ask that question, Margie?
Oh, I think that the crime scene is fascinating.
Yeah, the crime scene's pretty much a big mess.
Yeah, and I think there are clues that you've never seen in any other crime scene before.
And I would say maybe the last 10 pages of issue 3, I was like, there's like a nice little character, some character stuff at the end that I think that makes this more than just a murder mystery, that I think you'll be like, oh, this is worth reading.
Well, it's interesting that both of those answers are really cool, and it reminds me of what I love about mystery, because so often the little Easter eggs are planted all along, right? Like you were talking about with the crime scene, Margie. And then in the end, the best ones, the murder mysteries, they wrap up everything so quickly. There's so much momentum, and then all of a sudden, in those last few pages, everything starts getting put together, and it just starts clicking in your mind, like it was there all along, and I didn't notice, and what have you. So those are both great answers, because it sounds like this is going to be just one of those prototypical classic mystery stories. So I really hope readers show up for it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And anything else that we want to add here before we wind down for our audience?
Oh, here's what I'll say. It's 3 issues, but there's 60 pages each. So it's gigantic. It really is like a graphic novel. It's split into 3 parts. And that's kind of how we wrote it. And then there's a bunch of the issues will have a bunch of extra stuff my mom put together. Issue 1 has like a great collage of backstory and some of the history, but all tied into the narrative. I don't know. There's a lot of cool back matter.
Yeah, we can call it an appendix or back matter.
Yeah.
And because part of the story is based on a true historic event. I think it's kind of interesting to know what the event actually was.
Yeah. So there's a lot. Every issue has a little bit of extra.
That's awesome. And I think, building on something that happened in real life so often, as you know, because you've done this many times before, Matt, especially like we talked about ENIAC last time you're on, building on real world events, it adds an authenticity, and it kind of grounds it in a way that it just feels less fanciful, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, no, you can't beat real life. Like the best ideas are true things that happen, and I like it because then it gives you here's a little path to go like read about something that really happened, or just like inspiration to go look up some real stories.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Matt, remind everybody where they can follow your work online if they want to know more about your previous work.
Yeah, if you go to my website, mattkindt.com, everything, I'm on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and you can follow me all those places.
Great. I'll put a link to Matt's website in the show notes, everybody. So if you're having trouble finding it, it'll be there. Again, if you're at San Diego Comic-Con, advance copy at the Dark Horse booth. Otherwise, look for Gilt Frame issue 1 to be out in August.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, well, if you're in San Diego, definitely see us at the booth. It's gonna be an interesting setup. We're doing something a little bit weird there.
Unusual.
Yeah, unusual. That's what I mean.
Uncommon.
Yeah, definitely come by and say hi.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be there. I can't wait to see you again, Matt, and Margie meet you for the first time in person, and obviously get my copy signed. It'll be fantastic.
Yeah, we'll give you the special treatment.
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, it's been a pleasure, you two. Thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck with the series.
Yeah,
thanks. You. Our pleasure.
And to all you listeners, we want to thank you for taking the time to join us as well. We appreciate the support as always, and we will talk to you next time.
But I wanted to ask you a question too. Now, I don't know if that's fair play or not, but tell me about what you do here and how you got interested. As I'm sure you were young.
It's pretty interesting. I always loved to read from the time in kindergarten where I stories just came alive for me. And my mom used to take me to the library once a week, and I would always pick out one Hardy Boys book, one book that was, just whatever, and something Charlie Brown, always. And I remember specifically, it was in the summer between first and second grade, and we were going on a camping trip. And so we went to the library so I could get books to take on the camping trip. And I got this Charlie Brown book that was, it was like activities that you can do. And it was very thick, and it had just all kinds of stuff in there that you could do. And they had a little section on collecting. And we talked about, you could collect bottle caps or rocks or comic books or all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I want to collect something. That sounds like a lot of fun. And, of the things that were listed, I was like, comic books. So I can collect something because I have this, desire to collect something. It sounds like it'd be fun. And it's something I can read, which I love to read. That sounds, fantastic. That sounds like so much fun. And so we got back home, and there was kind of an empty lot next to my grandparents' house when I was growing up. There's a pharmacy there now, but at the time it was an empty lot. And then just on the other side of the empty lot was this little kind of mom and pop sort of grocery store. And they had a spinner rack with comics on it. So that was the first thing I did. We got back from the camping trip. Next time we went to my grandparents' house, I walked over and bought a comic. First comic I bought, it was a Super Friends comic because I love the Super Friends.
I knew you would know. I knew. Yeah.
And Ramona Fraden, the late, great Ramona Fraden, who passed away earlier this year, she was the artist on it. And when I got a chance to meet her at San Diego Comic-Con, I cried. I cried.
Oh, I bet.
It was so touching, and she was so lovely and what have you. But yeah, so that started me down this journey of collecting comics. And then the way I got into doing interviews and press stuff was the first time I went to San Diego Comic-Con, I loved it so much, but it's such a challenge to get a ticket every year. I was like, how can I make sure I never miss this again? Press. I'll become press. And so, that started me down this path of, being able to talk to creators, and a lot of them have become friends. And kind of what I learned early on after doing it for less than a year was, so I have this opportunity to affect people's appreciation for the medium. And I take it as a personal challenge when somebody says, I don't like comics. I'm like, what, you don't like stories? Because that's what we're talking about here, right? Why do movies make $1 billion? Because people love stories. So if you tell me you don't like comics, what I hear is I haven't read the right one yet. People think comics and think it's only superheroes and what have you. So I feel like if I can match up the right person with the right story, the right comic book story, it'll be like a gateway drug, and it'll suck them in, and they'll create a new reader. So that's why I do it. I've been doing it for over 12 years now. I've never charged for my content, never tried to make money off it. I don't want there to be any barrier to entry. People can, find it and learn about the medium and meet these great people that create them. And so, that's kind of how I got started, and why I've kept doing it. And it's why creators like Matt love to come on and talk to me, because I'm always informed. I always know what I'm talking about. And I'm kind of this comic book evangelical, if you will. I'm just trying to spread the word.
Yeah.
I don't talk about the movies, and I don't talk about the TV shows, at least not much, because it's all about the source material for me. So yeah, that's my story.
Wonderful. And how many comics in your collection now?
Oh God, 26,000 or so.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it's a
Do you have
giant, big giant wall. I literally have like an extra wall built in my house that separates my studio kind of from the rest of the house.
Good for you. Do you have? I guess you have them all inventoried.
That's a funny story. So a couple of years ago, I was like, every time I buy a big chunk or just buy my weekly books, after a while, I'd run out of room in a box, and I'd have to then shift everything, all these boxes. And so I was like, what I'm doing is put them chronologically. So I'm always adding to the end. I got halfway through that, and then it was like, oh my God, it's too much. And I stopped, and I haven't gotten back to it. So they're like half of them are sorted chronologically, the other half are still alphabetical.
I remember that when I was a kid. It was the big shift, right? Where you have to shift everything over, and then you didn't leave enough room, and it's like, oh, now I gotta shift again. I remember those days. Here's the thing: we're in the same place right now because we had the same. It was the same thing growing up. Like we had the comics. We should just, if you're recording this, just put this in there. Like this is an interesting conversation. Keep this in your thing. But we had the local grocery store, Harold's, and then you guys would drink so much Diet Coke. Yeah. But it was in the bottles, right? So you could return the bottles, and the deal was if we take the bottles and return them, then we could get the bottle return money we could spend on comics. So my brother would go buy comics at the grocery store, and we would happily carry the bottles in to get comics.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
But now this will break your heart. When Matt was really little and started reading the comics, he would read them in bed, and then he would fall asleep, and the comic would be under the covers and all twisted up. In the morning, the cover would be torn off.
G.I. Joe #1 was the cover is off of it because I slept on it, but then my brother, he's like 6 years older. He was very fastidious. I wasn't allowed in his room to touch his book, and I drove him crazy because my comics were just all over the place.
Well, thank you.
They are meant to be read. I'm not a big slab guy. Yeah. I'm not. And people ask me, why don't you collect slabs? I'm like, because they're meant to be read. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate the conversation.
My pleasure. And looking forward to seeing you two in San Diego in a few weeks.
You in San Diego?
Yeah, we'll see you there. Definitely swing by.
Absolutely.
Will do.
Thank you so much.
Take care, you two. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, bye.